recorded to the cloud, right?
Oh, there we go. I got it. That's
Okay.
recording now. Okay, so just like I said, or like we said a little bit earlier, if you would not like to be, like if you have questions and you participate, if you would not like to be in the video, just let me know and I can always remove your part or your speaking in it. But we'll get started now, and then if other people trickle in, we can go from there. I'm just going to minimize this. Okay, so thank you for being here. This is a sleep webinar where we're going to talk all about scheduling. So if you have not, and I don't actually recognize any names on here, so if you have not joined us before, Gail and I run this sleep webinar series. We try and meet up once a month or once every 6 weeks to talk over pain points for new mothers when it comes to baby sleep, whether that's foundations, where your baby should be sleeping. Today we're going to cover wake windows and scheduling. So we try and come together to just sort of share as a free resource information for new parents as they take on the world of baby sleep, which can be very overwhelming. This is just a reminder that I am not a pediatrician, that I am a sleep consultant. And so if your physician or your child's physician has given you any differing advice, please follow their advice. So like I said, we're going to talk about setting schedules, what that means, when you can set schedules for your babies. We'll cover wake windows, we'll cover age appropriate nap schedules, how to adapt, and then how to grow with your little one over time. But before we start, I'm just going to introduce myself, and then I will let Gail introduce herself. My name is Katie. I am a certified pediatric sleep consultant. I did my certification 2 years ago through the Cradle Coach Academy. Cradle Coach Academy is it's 200 hours of coursework, it's volunteer work. And then since then, I've worked with families all over the world. I've worked with families in Australia, Hong Kong, Italy, Canada, and then sort of border to border in the US. And so I've covered lots of bases, lots of different cultures, which has been amazing and very interesting. My foray into baby sleep came when my son was first born. He had an extremely complicated and extremely aggressive reflux diagnosis that led to just being exceptionally overtired and very cranky. Once we got his reflux resolved, he never slept ever. And so sort of mastering and conquering infant sleep for him was a monumental transition in my journey as a mother. And I decided that this was going to truly be my calling. And so I am deeply passionate about baby sleep, about helping new mothers find joy in postpartum. I think that once you master baby sleep, once you get your child sleeping soundly and well, your ability to parent just goes through the roof. And so my whole being is about making sure that other people are able to find the joy in parenting that I did after I mastered the art of baby sleep. And so that's myself and Little Bean, and this is Gail.
Hi, everybody. I do recognize some of your guys' names, so good to see you guys. And I'm Gail Macklin. I'm a registered nurse, and I'm a board certified lactation consultant, and I'm also an herbalist. And I'm also the mom of 3 adult children and 3 and almost 4. I have one due in September or August, actually, 4 little grandchildren. 3 are boys, and 1 we don't know what it's going to be. But Katie and I, we talk a lot about sleep, and I definitely have been through the struggles of sleep because of my 3 grandsons, they have all been the worst sleepers. They really have been. I talk to so many moms every day, as so a lot of you guys know, and I often ask people, how are your babies sleeping? And honestly, most of the time, most babies do pretty well. Katie and I were talking about that before that everybody hopped on, but there's definitely some babies, and we were talking about the fact that a lot of times it's more the baby. It's not anything like that you're doing wrong, but sometimes babies' personalities they're just tougher sleepers. And I imagine some of you are here for that reason, and it's not anything that's always like a really easy fix. So we're so glad that you guys are here, because I think it's hard to have a tough sleeper, and it just feels so good to have some support and have other people who kind of understand what you're going through. And even if your baby was a good sleeper at the beginning, because everybody comes in the first couple of weeks, they're like, I have a really good baby. My baby's doing
Oh my
so
God,
good.
I saw
Just
that.
eats and sleeps and eats and sleeps. And I always say, well, yeah, that's kind of the honeymoon phase.
That's
And you don't
great.
realize how like good you have it at the beginning sometimes. And then all of a sudden, all these things come up. They are, they're turning and they're rolling, they're teething, they're starting food, and there's just a million little snafus that first year. So anyway, well, welcome everybody. I
Well,
think Katie's great, and I think you'll get a lot out of this.
and we'll talk about some of the disruptions and how to handle that as well, because it is, I think you come home and you're sort of in this false sense of security where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what everybody's talking about. This is so easy. My baby sleeps all the time. And then like around week 3, they wake up. Um, and it's always a bit of an awakening.
Yeah. And one more thing I just wanted to mention, we will have time for questions and answers
Yeah.
at the end. So if you guys have any questions, Katie will turn off the PowerPoint and you'll be able to answer. You'll be able to ask all your questions too that you have.
Yeah. The format for this is normally we go through the topic, and I'll talk about the topic for about 20-25 minutes, and then at the end we'll have half an hour for a question and answer, so we can just make sure everybody's bases are covered. If we don't get to everybody for whatever reason, you can always text either of us, email either of us, and we'll get back to you with an answer, and I'm happy to jump on a call as well. Just silence that. Okay, so today we are going to talk about, I always start every presentation with sleep foundations to just make sure everybody is on the right foot to get started. We'll go over what wake windows are. We'll talk about what it means when your baby's overtired and how to prevent that, how to safeguard sleep at different times of disruption. And then we'll get into some of the meatier pieces of scheduling, whether it's a by the clock schedule or you're working to a structure. We'll talk about wake times and bedtimes, age appropriate naps, nap transitions, and then what it means to experience a disruption, whether that's regression, illness, transitions, life changes, those kind of things all cause sleep disruptions. So we'll talk about how to get yourself back on track when that happens, because they are inevitable. So like I said, we always start with sleep foundations. The reason we always start with sleep foundations is because at about 8 or 9 weeks, we see that sleep environment becomes really, really important. So where, those first 8 weeks of life, you can put your child down to sleep anywhere. You can put them to sleep maybe in a bassinet in the living room. There's tons of noise. There's siblings, there's dogs, there's bright lights, and it seems like they can sleep everywhere. Around 2-3 months, so 7, 8, 9 weeks, you start to see that suddenly they're having difficulty staying asleep, that maybe they only sleep for 25 or 30 minutes, that they might have a harder time falling asleep, that suddenly naps become difficult, bedtime gets a bit strange. And so this is when we see that environment really begins to play a very important part. And so this is what we call our sleep foundations, making sure that your room, whatever sleep space they are sleeping in, is very, very, very dark. Any kind of sliver of light, any LED display, we want to make sure that we're covering everything up so it's pitch black. And when I'm referencing this, I like to explain to my families that I'm working with that if you are standing in the room, your baby should not be able to see you. So that's kind of the level of dark. If you're doing night changes, you can always turn on a very dim light. But we want to keep sleep spaces as dark as possible for the duration of sleep times, so that your child starts to recognize the cue that dark is for sleeping and light is for activity. If you are not using white noise, it is the biggest gift to parenthood. I've got a very noisy husband, I've got a very noisy dog, and white noise just serves to disrupt both, or to minimize immediate disruptions. So dogs barking, husband sneezing, toddlers screaming. But white noise also offers environmental continuity. So it helps reassure your baby when they come between sleep cycles and lift to a lighter sleep cycle that they are in the same space that they were when they went to sleep. So it's reassuring, it offers a sense of security, and then it also blocks out any kind of noise disruption that might wake your child early from a nap. We want to have a nice, safe sleep space. So a nice firm mattress with only a fitted sheet, and nothing in the crib that can cause distraction. So no toys, no blankets, no mobiles above the crib. Nothing with any lighting anywhere near the crib. So your sleep space is safe. There's no risk of suffocation. And also there's no distractions that might keep your little one awake. And then we want to keep our temperature nice and cool. And so that typically for the Americans in the room, that's 70 to 72 degrees. For the Canadians, it's 20, or to Canadians, British, Australians, it's sort of 20 to 23 degrees in that space. And then to keep your little one warm, if they have not learned to roll yet, you can put them in a swaddle. If they have learned to roll, you can put them in a sleep sack. So they're still nice and cozy and warm, but they're not in the crib with a blanket or any other loose fitting item. If your child has started to take cat naps, there is a good chance that you have read a little bit about wake windows, but we're going to start from the very beginning. Wake windows are the amount of time that your baby is able to stay awake before becoming overtired. This is usually much shorter than you think as a first-time parent. I remember when Liam was born, it never occurred to me that he didn't just go to sleep when he needed to sleep, that there were these caps on windows that he could stay awake before he needed to nap again. I naively very much just thought that he would sleep when he needed to, which is not the case. In those first few weeks of life, wake windows are so short and feeding takes so long that often you feel a lot like you're waking, you're feeding, you're changing a diaper, you're maybe nursing a second half, and then you're putting a baby right back to sleep. And that's totally normal. That stretches and elongates over time. But even by 5 or 6 months, the longest your little one can stay awake is 2 to 3 hours, not 5 to 6 hours. It's 2 to 3 hours. And so what we want to do is create a balance as you're working through your day where you're slowly building sleep pressure towards the evening, towards bedtime, but you're preventing your baby from becoming overtired. And so you can see even by the time they're, up to 2 years old, you still are seeing that the max they can stay awake for is around 6 hours. When your baby becomes overtired, they mirror what we call the stress response, meaning that their body floods with cortisol. This is what we as adults refer to as a second wind. So I think you've all been there when you've been really, really tired, and then all of a sudden you feel a bit goofy, you feel a bit silly, but you're overtired. So what happens? You lose control of your emotions, you lose control of your ability to self-regulate. And where as adults, we are able to regulate to the ability of going to sleep, your little one actually can't. And so they tend to struggle to fall asleep, and then it causes them to pop awake and not get the full length of restful sleep that they need. And so often you see with an overtired baby that not only do they have trouble falling asleep, they have trouble staying asleep. So if we pop back to our wake windows and you have a baby that is, say, around the age of 4 months, and they're only able to ever sleep for 25 minutes. And when they wake up, they're really, really upset. There's a pretty good chance that they've actually gone beyond their wake window by the time you're putting them down. And so we really want to focus, particularly in those early months, on 2 things. One, making sure that we are within our wake windows when we're going to put our child down to sleep. And then 2, that we're watching for sleepy cues. And part of the reason we watch for sleepy cues is because maybe your child is in a period of growth. Maybe they are experiencing discomfort. Maybe they were awake for longer than you realized. Maybe they didn't nap for as long as you realized. There's a variety of reasons why your child might be tired earlier just now than they were at the same time yesterday. And so to prevent them from becoming overtired, not only do we follow wake windows, we also watch really closely for sleepy cues, particularly for younger babies. Sleepy cues vary baby to baby, and they also vary sleep time to sleep time. And so it's always a bit of a guessing game, but usually you'll see as your child reaches the 5, 6, 7 months to become really recognizable. So you're often looking for red rings around eyes, yawning, increased grumbliness is a really big one. Usually by the time your child is crying profusely, they're already well into overtired. But this general demeanor change where they've gone from being happy, maybe they start being a little bit giggly and super cute, and then they start grumbling right away. That is typically a sign of being overtired, obviously, when it's closer to the end of the wake window. A lot of babies will become kind of antisocial, and you might wonder what I mean by that because your baby's only 4 or 5 months old. Generally, it's a lack of engagement. So staring into the distance, eyes glazed over, they don't maybe mimic you as much. They don't follow you. They don't track you around the room as much. They just kind of stare off into the distance. So these are all things that we want to watch for and try to, as quickly as possible, get our little one down to sleep. Okay, so we have wake windows, and then now what do you do with them? And I think this is a really natural question is, do I go down by the clock? Do I follow a clock-based schedule, or do I follow wake windows to a T? And where's the balance, right? Can I extend wake window 10 or 15 minutes? And so we look at it in two parts. One is a structured day, and one is a scheduled day. Before your child is able to connect nap cycles, we see that schedules are very much based on wake windows as opposed to a clock-based schedule. And so maybe you're aiming towards a 90-minute nap for that first nap of the day. If your child's unable to connect sleep cycles, or they're younger than 4 or 5 months, it's super normal that they would actually maybe sleep for 20 minutes on occasion, or maybe they only sleep for 40 minutes. And so because they're so sensitive and wake windows are so tight and constrained at that time in their life, if you were to wait all the way through till the next scheduled sleep time, actually you're going to find your baby's overtired by the time you put them down to sleep. So until you can get those longer, really restful, consolidated stretches of sleep, we tend to work to a structured day. And then around 5 or 6 months, when your baby's able to connect those sleep cycles, naps become more predictable. They all sort of start to fall within an hour plus range. Then you can start to work towards an actual scheduled day. So naps become at clock-based times. So maybe if your little one is waking at 7, maybe nap 1 is at 9 to 10:30, maybe nap 2 is at 12:30 to 1:30, and then maybe nap 3 is from 3:30 till 4:30. Once you are on a solid 2-nap schedule, which I'll cover nap transitions in a minute, so we'll get to that. But once you are on a solid 2-nap schedule, then your schedule is truly clock-based. That there's little need for deviation if your baby wakes early from a nap. And usually by that point, because sleep is consolidated and has settled into a more regular routine, you can go by clock-based schedule and then offer lots of independence for your child to put themselves back to sleep, because there will always be times when they wake early, and you'll only have an answer as to why for some of them. And the other, you'll sit there like it's a puzzle, and you will sit there and mull over going like, why did you wake up? Was it too hot? Was it too cold? Was your swaddle too tight? Was your sleep sack too heavy? And the answer is that you are never going to find out. For most of it, it's just a guessing game. So what you want to do is be prepared for how to respond to those situations, and just be ready and know that, okay, I need to put my child down a little bit early for my next one, but not too early. And we'll talk about what that balance means. But I think it is important to remember that even on your most scheduled days, you are still going to have reasons why you can't always follow it. So maybe you've got a doctor's appointment, maybe you've got a birthday party, maybe you have a sibling who has a soccer game. And so a lot of time it's about moving schedules around to make sure that you are always finding the balance of getting within the right wake window, and then also preventing your little one from becoming overtired. So what does it mean to structure your day? This is when you've got a younger baby. I think those first 9 weeks postpartum, where everything feels a bit like a free-for-all, particularly my type A mamas that are out there, you're looking for a pattern. Like, when can I get some form of structure back in my day? When does there become a day and a night again? When does there become day sleep and night sleep? Because those first few weeks, it's just like feeding around the clock and sleeping around the clock, but maybe not sleeping around the clock, and it all becomes a bit of a jumble. So when can you expect to get days and nights back? This is around, I sort of say around 6, 7 weeks, we should see a very clear difference between day sleep and night sleep. And yes, your baby is probably still feeding through the night. That's super normal. They should still be feeding through the night. They should be feeding all the way through the night until your pediatrician says they've gained enough weight that you can start weaning them from feeds. And sometimes they'll do that on their own, and sometimes you need to do it with them. But at 7, 8 weeks, we should start to see a pattern where your baby is awake more during the day. And you can do this, you can help this along in those first few weeks by starting your day at the same time every day. And if you follow me on Instagram or we've ever spoken on the phone for more than 3 minutes, you know that this is the first thing I say is turn the lights on at the same time every single day, open your curtains and expose your baby to as much daylight as possible. This kickstarts the release of serotonin. And when daylight is involved in that first wake window, it helps your baby to wake up and realize that this is no longer nighttime. And so 7 o'clock, and say if your wake time is 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock at the same time every single day, lights on, windows open, breast or bottle in mouth. And so we are starting the day on a full belly at the same time every day. And when you do this, you start to see this beautiful and predictable structure come together, which for so many new parents is like just this gift. Because when you're waking your baby at the same time every day, they are typically going down to sleep at the same time for the first nap of the day. And then as those naps become more consolidated and more predictable, nap 1 starts and finishes at the same time every day. And then nap 2 starts at the same time every day. And then it falls into place. And what we start to see is a predictable day come together. And because at this stage, your baby is still too young for a scheduled, it's like a by the clock schedule, you get to enjoy understanding what comes next. And that's reassuring for both you and your baby, because babies by week 6, if you follow Wonder Weeks, you know that they are pattern seeking. They're constantly looking for cues. They're constantly looking for structure and routine. They like the predictability of knowing what comes next. And so when we have a structured day, it's reassuring for both you know what to expect, and your little one, because they know what to expect, and sleep becomes more predictable. It's kind of a natural way of bringing in a structure. This also applies, this pattern seeking, cue seeking is really helpful with nap time and bedtime routines. And so when we're looking to structure our day, often 10 minutes before a structured nap time or scheduled nap time, you can start doing a pre-sleep routine, which offers your baby cues. So, first I go upstairs, then we turn the lights down, and we turn the sound machine on, I put on my pajamas, I get a fresh diaper, I get a sleep sack, and then I go to sleep. And offering that predictable structure then eliminates the surprise of, and then I was plonked in a crib and mom left me alone. And so it's kind of a nice way to ease your baby into the idea of going to sleep, set them up for success when it comes to be sleeping independently in their crib or bassinet. And then at bedtime routines, you can extend that over time. And so you maybe include a bath, an extra story, a song, so that you're offering a cue that this is the long sleep. And so it's all about offering your child those sequence of events that offer cues that now is a good time for sleeping. When you start your day at the same time every day, then often we land on a consistent bedtime as well. Bedtimes vary over age. I'm going to take you through those in a second. But if you are following the structure of naps for the day and then the structure of wake windows for the day, you will find that your bedtime is roughly consistent, plus or minus 20 to 30 minutes. And that's kind of all that you're looking for. So start your day at the same time every day, aim to end your day at the same time every day, and you'll find that everything in the middle kind of comes together over time. Sleep requirements. And so we enter the portion of the presentation on nap math. Nap math is a challenge ongoing all the time, because even if you know exactly how much sleep your baby needs, how many naps they need, they're going to do something to fool you, like wake up early, wake up with this weird, awkward time where it's too short for a nap before bed or too long. Like it's just, and so you're constantly shifting and moving in those early months before you get to a clock-based schedule to help your little one find that balance between how much sleep they need and how much awake time they need to be able to go to sleep. And the whole thing is a bit of a puzzle. If your baby is under the age of 3 months, we don't even bother to try and classify how many naps they have because they're too unpredictable. Maybe today your 6-week-old baby has 4 2-hour naps. All of them are beautiful. Everything is, they're all independent. The baby's sleeping like a dream. And then maybe tomorrow they sleep for 45 minutes total and you have no idea why. So that's normal. Just roll with it. Do your best to get your little one as much sleep as you can during the day, waking every 2 hours for feeding. We want to feed frequently during the day, particularly in those early months while we're correcting day-night confusion, so that your baby starts to learn that I eat during the day and I sleep during the night. So that's why we kept naps for newborns at 2 hours. And that's just something to keep in mind as you go through, making sure that your baby is getting enough to eat during the day. At 4 months, we see that settle down to 4 naps. 5 to 6 months, we see this transition to 3 naps. Sometime between 7 and 13 months, your baby will transition to 2 naps. Usually that's 8, 9 months. But again, every baby's different. My son hung on to 2 naps forever. And so it varies. And then 14, usually somewhere in the window of 14 to 19 months, you see your baby drop down to 1 nap. What I really want to note is this, because you'll see that even though your overall sleep requirements are decreasing, they're not decreasing that much over the 2 years. And so what we're seeing is sleep consolidate into one bigger, chunkier nap while wake windows get longer. And that's all you're seeing with your nap transitions, is that your baby's able to stay awake for longer, not that they necessarily need significantly less sleep during the day. And so how this ends up working is that you have a set of naps and it extends over the day and pushes bedtime until bedtime's too late. And then you drop the last nap and you come forward. And so what you see is your day becomes this stretch of longer and longer and longer and longer, and then quite short, and then longer and longer and longer and longer, and then quite short. And so your last nap of the day should not be pushing your bedtime later than allowing your child for roughly 11 hours of night sleep. And so it's this constant push and pull of balancing too much and too little day sleep. And so if you're seeing sudden periods of night disruption, and this is kind of how you can tell if your child is ready for a nap transition, which is easily one of my most popular questions. Again, every time we put a Q&A up, every time I offer people the opportunity to ask questions, this is inevitably one that comes up, is how do I know? How do I know if my child's ready to drop from 3 to 2, 2 to 1? How do I know if my child still needs a nap? And so this is a blanket statement. Every baby is going to manifest it differently, and which is where it gets a bit complicated. Knowing whether it's a nap transition or a sleep regression, or is it a discomfort, like it's all a bit of a puzzle. The one thing I will say is that if your baby is in the window where they are ready to have a transition and you've waited out a couple of weeks and you're still finding this period of disruption, it's worth dropping back 1 nap to see what happens. There are pretty clear signs that tend to mix with a regression. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you are not dropping a nap too early through a regression, and then really early to be on the next level down of a nap schedule. So these signs of a nap transition include consistently fighting 1 or more naps. Usually it's the end of the nap, the last nap of the day. You will see your baby fighting the last nap. Sometimes, very rarely, it's the first nap, but usually it's the last nap of the day. Bedtime is pushing too late. Long wakeful periods in the night, we call these split nights. So if your baby is up for 90 minutes or 2 hours at 2 o'clock in the morning, you've fed them, you've changed them, you still can't get them to go back to sleep, that's a pretty big red flag that there's an issue with the schedule. And then obviously if you're putting them down and they're just not ready to go to bed, so they're like really fighting bedtime, taking them forever to go to sleep, that's a big one for toddlers, as well, as you start to cut back on that last nap. And you see that it's pushing bedtime late and it's kind of 8:30 at night and they're still yapping away in their crib, but they're totally fine. That is a good indicator that it is time to have a look in the nap transition. When you are looking at setting bedtimes, and I use the phrase setting very loosely, because for those first few months of life, you're definitely aiming for a bedtime, not setting a bedtime. Those first sort of 8 weeks, 7-8 weeks, bedtime can be as late as 11 p.m. And so you are lining bedtime up with your baby's longest stretch of sleep, which is typically like 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., maybe in those first few weeks, if you're lucky. What you see is that stretch becomes longer and longer and longer. So maybe they're sleeping from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. And then you can shift the whole thing forward slowly over time, stretching, 9:30, then you go 9, then you go 8:30, then you go 8. And this whole thing then brings that long stretch of sleep forward. If you are finding that your baby is then waking and hungry and needs to feed early, you can add a dream feed to help them bring that bedtime forward. But around 3 months, bedtime should come forward to about 7 p.m. And then that's where it stays, really, roughly, give or take a little bit. That's where your bedtime stays for the first couple of years of life. It depends on your start time. And normally we do your daily wake time plus 12 is generally where you then set bedtime. So if you are waking your baby at 6:30 every morning, then you're putting them to bed at 6:30 or 7 every night, depending on where you are then on that nap scale. And so if your baby is at the larger end of the wake window, but hasn't dropped a nap, you'll find maybe bedtime is 7:30 with a 6:30 wake time. But then when you drop that last nap off, then you'll find bedtime is 6 p.m. So it kind of stretches and it waxes and wanes, basically. It comes and goes, but always within a window. So you're never going to be putting your baby down to bed at 10 one night and then 7 the next night, and then maybe you put your baby to bed at 9. Because what we want to do is help their biological clock have predictable sleep times. And when their biological clock has predictable sleep times, their body releases the right hormones and then help them sleep over time. So it's important to remember that bedtime is usually earlier than you think it is. You want to generally maximize the wake window, the larger end of the wake window, before bedtime, but not push so far that your baby's overtired. And a good indicator if your baby is overtired at bedtime is if they pop awake at the 40-minute mark. We call this a false start. False start is your baby's already overtired at bedtime, and so waking rather than being able to sleep through. And so if that's you, bring bedtime forward 10 or 15 minutes. Surviving disruptions. And we talk a lot about disruptions. Disruptions are sleep regressions, they are illness, they are transition. Maybe you're on vacation, maybe baby's sleeping in a different sleep space, maybe mom's going back to work, maybe a new sibling's coming home, and then maybe we're hitting our physical milestones. Physical milestones are huge disruptors when it comes to baby sleep. This is when we find baby standing in the crib at 2 o'clock in the morning, stuck in a position they can't get out of. And so these periods of disruption, whether it's a regression or it's an illness or it's a transition, they pass, and often they pass with being consistent. They also are huge opportunities where we pick up unfavorable habits. And I don't say bad habits because honestly, everybody needs to do what everybody needs to do. But there is a point where maybe that doesn't work for you anymore. And maybe these are habits that you've picked up during these periods of transition and disruption. And often we can avoid picking up new habits by being consistent in our bedtimes, being consistent in our routines, being consistent in allowing our child independence to learn to go back to sleep and then learn to go back to sleep in the night. And if we're consistent and we're patient and we're calm and we are as rational as possible, as rational as you can be when you're experiencing a period of significant sleep disruption, then it will pass and life will go back to being as normal as possible. If you are considering sleep training, I often recommend, unless it's illness or transition. So if you're experiencing a sleep regression, sleep regressions are a great time to sleep train, just because there's already disruption. It's a pretty, it's a good way to resolve that disruption while tackling independent sleep and just getting through that milestone as well. And then lastly, I wanted to cover what happens when it goes off the rails, which is totally normal. Maddie is my daughter, so she's going to be our example today. I like to apply a rule called split the difference. And split the difference is super helpful because it keeps your day roughly on track, no matter what situation you are thrown at, whether it's a short nap, whether it's an early waking, whether it's a skipped nap altogether. You can use the rule of split the difference to keep your day from blowing out of the water. And so, for example, in this example, Maddie sleeps every morning like clockwork between 9:30 and 11 a.m. That's her nap time. She's 9 months old. It's scheduled. That's when Maddie sleeps. If Maddie sleeps at 10:30 or wakes at 10:30 rather, what we would do is divide the difference in half. And so Maddie wakes at 10:30, and actually I shouldn't have given you the example of her being 9 months old because that's now, and right now she's clock-based schedule. So let's say Maddie is 4 months old and she sleeps from 9:30 until 11. And today she wakes at 10:30. My dog barked, woke her up. So the difference between when Maddie was supposed to wake up and when Maddie did wake up is 30 minutes, right? And so instead of putting her down 30 minutes early and running the risk that she has another short nap and then she's going to bed an hour early, what we want to do is split that difference in half. So take the 30 minutes and cut it in two, and then you have 15 minutes. And so you put Maddie down 15 minutes early for her next nap. This works within the leeway of preventing her becoming overtired while also stretching her to make sure that she is staying closer to on schedule. Split that difference again and add that to her nap. So you can add 5 minutes to her nap. Then you're slowly cutting down the difference between where she is on her schedule and where she should be to get to a reasonable bedtime. This principle works exceptionally well if you are experiencing, say, a gassy day, or some form of discomfort that is causing your baby to wake up. By splitting the difference, we can generally land at the end of the day towards maybe a 30-minute early bedtime, but it's almost always better to do an early bedtime than it is to do an extra nap that pushes bedtime late, unless for whatever reason, maybe baby fell asleep in the car and has only slept 10 minutes. Do we count that as a nap? That's kind of a different scenario because you would just discount that, move the whole day later. But other than that, if you're working towards a regular schedule and you have an early waking or a shortened nap for whatever reason, this applies if you are needing to wake baby to go to the doctor, for example, if you are only able to get, say, 1 cycle nap in the car. So instead of sleeping for 90 minutes, maybe baby sleeps for 45, then the same thing, you put them down 20 minutes early for the next one and then wake them 10 minutes early, later than you would, and you are back on schedule. So sorry, when I say wake them 10 minutes later, I mean add 10 minutes back to their nap. And so then you're catching up on schedule as you go through your day. It sounds a bit complicated, but when you start using it in practice, you'll see it's actually just keep dividing by 2 until there's no more difference. And it actually is very helpful. Adapting on the fly is one of the most important tools I can give you as a sleep consultant, because I think as new parents, we can get so wrapped up in making sure that everything is perfect. And sometimes it just can't be perfect. And so if we can relieve that stress off of our new parents and recognize that sometimes it's not perfect and give you the tools that you need so that you can remedy a situation when things don't go well, then I think that's one of the most valuable things I can impart. And so this rule of splitting the difference
schedule all this stuff over now weekdays. That's what it sounds like.
And then when it comes to getting back on track, if you do pick up any kind of bad habits, or new habits, we'll call them, while experiencing a period of disruption, it's important to just be consistent and offer support where you need to. Like if your little one is sick and you're not getting the sleep that they need during the day, they're not going to get sleep they need during the night. And so sometimes you'll need to step in, sometimes you'll need to rock your baby back to sleep to help them connect sleep cycles. Sometimes you'll need to intervene more often to make sure they are getting the stretches of sleep that they need. And that's fine. That's totally normal. It happens all the time. We want to just apply a rule of being as consistent as possible when things are quote unquote normal. So giving your baby extra space to put themselves down, practice drowsy but awake where you can, practice independent sleep where you can, sleep train during your regression, and then focus on getting back on track. And if you have sleep trained, then you can always use your original sleep training technique to help your baby get back on track at a later time. I spoke for a lot longer than I had planned. I'm very sorry. So that's the extent of my presentation today. I am more than happy to take any questions if you have any. And I just want, yeah, I'm really happy that you're here. So thank you for being here. I hope it was helpful. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so we can all come. That's not what I was planning on doing. There we go. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can all just come back and have a chat. You are welcome to turn on your video if you'd like. You are also welcome to just raise your hand and we can start with any questions you have. No questions tonight?
Hi, my name's Pooja. Thank you
Hi.
so much. That was like a really informative webinar.
Yeah.
We've met Gail a few times at New Mother, New Baby, so both of you guys have been a great resource. Our baby girl is 10 weeks old, so we are getting ready to transition her out of the swaddle because, I mean, she sleeps really well with it. But you know, sometimes she gets like kind of agitated and she's just trying to get out. So do you have any tips on how to get her out of that? Because it's really hard to put her to sleep when she's not swaddled.
Okay, so I would not rush getting rid of the swaddle. If your baby is not showing signs of rolling, I would keep her in there for as long as possible. The swaddle kind of works like a blanket, same way a sleep sack would, but it's really helpful in keeping them cozy and bundled. And so more than just the Moro reflex, it makes them feel secure. If you are having a hard time keeping your baby in the swaddle, which is what it sounds like, are you using a blanket or what kind of swaddling are you doing?
It's like one of those Velcro ones. This brand we've used like Swaddle Me and then the Kia Baby Swaddle. So it just like Velcros with the arms and then there's like one for the feet.
Yeah. Okay. So you can try and go a little tighter. If that's not going to work, the general progression of dropping the swaddle that you would go through is one arm out and then do a couple of days of one arm out. And then once she's used to doing one arm out, then put the second one, but keep it tight around her body under her arms until she's comfortable with both arms out. Dropping the swaddle is just like, it's just a couple of very annoying days. She will figure it out, particularly the swaddling. What you find, or the startling. So what you find is when they come out of the swaddle, they don't know what to do with their limbs. And so often they wake themselves up like all night long, whacking themselves in the face.
Yeah.
And so the reason we want to wait until she's able to roll is until she has slightly better limb control. So she's only doing that when she startles, not doing it because she's just not used to having arms. I really love arms up swaddles, not to encourage you to buy it because I'm sure you all have so much just stuff, but I really love the arms up swaddles for when they're starting to break loose from the arms down one, because it allows them to kind of startle and get used to it without punching themselves in the face. And so Love to Dream has a great option, which is arms up, and then it zips off one arm at a time. And then it transitions to a sleep sack. So you can use it forever afterwards if you'd like. But when their arms up, they get more freedom. So if you go from using the Velcro one with arms down, just do one arm out. I love that I'm like trying to visually make this obvious for you, like I'm an infant. Do one arm out. And then once your baby gets used to having that one arm out, switch so that your, so I'm just gonna plug my computer in before it dies. Switch so your second arm, but it's just, particularly if you're doing it with a younger baby, it's just a crappy couple of days.
Okay.
And then she'll get used to it. So if you'll find she'll do one arm a lot easier than she's doing the other, and just kind of push through. Try not to swaddle back and forth, just dig right in and get it done, because the faster you do it, the faster it'll be over.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Love to Dream swaddles, so that could be kind of like a good transition where it's like still kind of securing her, but it's letting her put her arms, like it's not straight jacket to the side, it's at least letting her put her arms up. So maybe we'll start to incorporate that when she hasn't shown signs of rolling over yet, but maybe in a few weeks when she does, or somewhere in the future.
So if she starts to show signs of rolling, you need to go arms out completely.
Arms up, okay.
Yeah. So if you're having trouble keeping her in the arms down swaddle, I would just go straight to an arms up swaddle if that's going to be the progression you're going to go. Because if she goes up on her side, if she does any kind of rolling whatsoever, you're in a position where you actually just need to go full both arms out at the same time. And that's, like I said, it's just a really bad couple of days, but then it passes. It's like any other sleep disruption. It'll come through and you'll be fine on the other end. It's just, if you're planning on going to the arms up, I would do it sooner rather than later if you're having a hard time keeping her in the arms down.
Okay. Thank you so much.
No problem. I did see, let's see, we've got questions. What percentage do I recommend for hatch? Okay. So that depends on where in your room. For everybody, just make sure everybody knows, hatch is a sound machine. It's a wonderful sound machine. It's a beautiful invention. It depends on where in your room the hatch machine sits and then how close that is to your baby. And so if you're putting it like under their crib or right next to their crib, then I would keep it between 50 and 60. I keep ours, for example, it's all the way over by the door, which is quite a ways away from my daughter's crib. And so we have it up as high as 85 because the dog and the husband. But it depends. You don't want it to be too loud, too close. And so the rule of thumb is that it should sound like you are standing on the outside of a shower curtain. That's how loud it can be to be safe. The important thing to remember about white noise is it creates a sound wall. So what you want is for it to be between where the noise is coming from and where your baby is sleeping. And so if you're finding there's still periods, my dog's if you are finding there are still periods of disruption, you can add a second sound machine, maybe on the other side of the door. That might help if you're a little bit worried about the volume. But 50 to 60 if it's close, and then 85 if it's at the kind of opposite end of the room. The answer is your baby should not be able to hear everything. So if your baby can hear everything, move it away and turn it louder, and that should solve your problem. My daughter is 1 and she's gone through the different progressions and is still not sleeping through the night. That's tough. Okay. You're pretty set bedtime routine and keep to the same window, but I'm not sure if she has figured out putting herself back to sleep. It sounds like you need to sleep train your daughter. Maybe. It depends if you're sure her schedule is right and you're sure she's eating, and like at 1, she should be eating enough during the day. And so if she's still waking in the night, it's either scheduling or it's comfort. If you're sure her scheduling is right, then it's likely that she just doesn't know how to put herself back to sleep. 1-year-olds are a little bit difficult to sleep train only because they're able to convey how they're feeling. So it can be, but it's like completely manageable. You can do it with timers. You can almost do it with Sleep Lady Shuffle, although she might be just a little bit too young. But running controlled crying, it usually goes pretty quickly. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else in your message which would tell me why she's waking up, but it sounds to me like she's not able to self-soothe. I would also really focus on helping her, making sure she goes to sleep independently at nighttime. Often we see this association of mom rocked me to bed, I woke up, mom's not there, I'm going to cry out because I feel insecure or unsafe, right? I'm somewhere different than I was when I fell asleep. So really focus on naps and making sure that she's putting herself to sleep independently at the beginning of the night, and then don't run in right away. Make sure you're giving her enough time to be able to try to put herself to sleep during the night and give lots of space for her to do that. If that doesn't work, then you're probably looking at having to sleep train. But make sure she's on the right nap schedule. She should still be on 2 pretty good naps. So if she's waking through the night, you kind of want to know what's causing those wakings. It could just be that she doesn't know how to go back to sleep, or it could be that her wake windows are not correct. If you want to send me a message or have your email, I'll send you an email and we can just talk about what schedule she's on. And we can just make sure that she's on the right schedule before you look at what options there are for you. Okay, Katrina, my daughter. Okay. Okay. even if he hasn't eaten. Sorry, normally we just chat through the questions, and so I don't usually have to read them as we're going. Even if yes, you should advise your daycare teacher to wake him. First of all, you want to reserve the 3 to 4 hour stretches of sleep for nighttime. And if your child is doing 3 to 4 hour stretches during the day, they're less likely to do the 3 to 4 hours at night. Equally, you want to make sure they're eating as much as they can, as frequently as they can during the day, so that they're not hunting those calories at night. And it's super normal that a 12-week-old is still feeding in the night. So I'm not by any means implying that by feeding them enough during the day that you're going to see night feedings drop off, or all your night feedings drop off. But you do want to make sure that they are feeding every kind of 2-3 hours during the day still at this stage. So I would tell your daycare that they should wake and then do a wake window, do like a 60 to 90 minute, or 90 to 2 actually at that age, probably closer to the 90, 75 to 90 range, and then put them back down for another nap, and then just make sure they're feeding on like the 2 hour schedule, 2-3 hours. Artie, you don't have to do a full cried out. You can do interventions if you want. You can do timers, and there's a bunch of different options. So how many people would like a run down on sleep training while we're in here? Maybe if you would like the options, I'm happy to run you through what the different options are for sleep training. You can do full cried out. Okay, Ainsley, if everybody knows how to do the emojis too, you can throw one of those up at me. Otherwise, Ainsley, I'll just talk to you about it after. But you can do full cried out, or you can start running timers so that you're not leaving your baby in there completely, but you are still giving them space. And it's about finding a balance. I think for 1-year-olds, it's really hard to just leave them. And so let's talk about what those options are. Oh, it's because everybody's babies are sleeping. That's why we're typing today. Now I get it. Okay. Okay, better now. During the night, only once at 4:30. What part makes them? Okay. Barbara, your schedule is, if your baby is waking and not going back to sleep at 5:30 or 6, that's typically a signal that they're overtired. So they're not getting the right allocation of day sleeps over their nap schedule. And so I would take a look at your nap schedule. 4 naps is good. You might be ready to drop to 3 at 4 months. And then just making sure that your wake window is the right length before bed. And so 4:30 could be an early, like too much or too little day sleep. It's more likely too little day sleep or short naps over, like too many short naps over the period of the day. And so we tend to classify naps that are shorter than an hour as not restful or not complete when your baby gets to about 4 or 5 months. That's because they haven't completed 2 full sleep cycles. And so they're not considered to be as restorative. And so if you're finding your baby's doing 4 45-minute naps, that would lead to an early morning waking, or if that last wake window of the day is off. So if you go back, an early morning start, like a 5:30 or 6 a.m. start, is typically the sign of a scheduling issue. So you can have a look at your schedule and just make sure your naps are right. And then if that still continues, I would have a look at dropping off that 4th nap, because at 4 months, you should be moving towards a 3 nap. So extending through and then looking towards dropping 3 naps. And he might just be an early nap dropper. So have a look at that. Look at this. Okay. Rachel, I have multiple places. Yes. Okay. So Rachel's question is, if your baby misses a nap, is it okay to go past the 2-hour nap? The answer is yes and no. Yes and no. because you want to align as best as possible your feeding and your sleeping schedules during the day to make sure you're feeding frequently, and then also that your baby's getting enough sleep and not too much sleep. So it's this weird balance. If your baby is only feeding, and I think you said she only sleeps at night 6 hours and wakes up and feeds and will go back to sleep. 6 hours is actually pretty good. And then plus another 3 or 4. And so if she's not super hunting calories in the night, like what if you see a baby that is feeding every 2 or 3 hours at nighttime, right? You want to make sure that baby is getting more milk during the day, because then they are less likely to wake up as frequently at night. If she's only waking once in the night and she's still getting good long stretches of solid sleep, she's able to go back pretty quickly, then it's okay, I think, to add an extra hour in here and there. Not often, but as a matter of, I know she's super overtired. I know as her mother that she needs extra sleep. I want to give her the extra sleep to prevent her from going overtired. I personally would probably look at doing 30 minutes as opposed to a full hour. So then you're keeping it closer to the 2-hour mark, because you do want to make sure that she doesn't reverse into getting all of her sleep in the daytime, which is something that they sometimes go back and do. So it's just about that balance. If it's a one-off, if it's here and there, adding in a little bit of extra sleep to that nap is going to be fine, but I wouldn't do it with a regular basis, because you really want to keep daytime for activity and nighttime for sleeping. Okay. Okay, so Barbara, yeah, I would have a look. I mean, at 4 months, it's still really, really tough to get those long stretches of naps. But have a look at extending wake windows, and then that should help to extend at least some of his naps to get him a longer time. And then he won't be overtired because he'll have had more restorative naps. Okay. Have I missed questions? Is there, Ainsley, I know you want to talk about sleep training. So I will run through that now, and then I think we'll call it, because it's been an hour. Let me get some water. I'm starting to sound a bit like Sean Connery. Okay. Sleep training runs on a scale from low intervention to higher intervention. And so your low intervention methods would be cried out, so not going in at all. They're generally a little faster than faster over a period of time, not on a night by night basis, but over the length of time it takes in total, than your higher interventions, which run all the way down to what we call 3-minute timers. There's also Sleep Lady Shuffle, there's pick up and put down. All of these methods run on a scale of higher intervention to low intervention. Your higher intervention, you go in frequently, you offer greater support. If it's a younger baby, sometimes you combine pick up, put down. So you're like really present and there to support your baby. And they just take long. They take a longer period of time. They're often very physical. And then you have versions that are on the other end of the scale where you go in less. Cried out's a really tough one. I wouldn't normally do a full cried out one. That being said, some babies, just the timers and the going in and the soothe and pat and the I'm not going to pick you up, but I'm going to be here. Some babies, that just makes them really angry. And so you kind of tailor your approach to your parenting style, the degree of responsiveness that you want to include in your sleep training technique, as well as your baby's temperament. So if your baby is, and I like to call them spicy babies, if your baby is a little bit spicier, maybe they get frustrated at your presence. We see this a lot with older babies, where you're going in every 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and it's just making your baby mad, because they have the wherewithal to understand that they want you to pick you up. They're crying because they want you to pick them up, and you're not doing it. So it just makes them frustrated. So you work out which approach works best for you, and then which approach works best for your baby. So you can do, maybe you do 3-minute timers, maybe you do 5-minute timers, maybe you do Ferber, which is extended timers over time. So 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes. I'm sure we've seen this on the internet, and then 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 12 minutes, 12 minutes, and on over time. And so all of them have the same underscore of set a boundary and stick to it when it comes to what level of intervention you are going to offer your baby. Maybe that is a higher intervention, and the boundary is I'm going to come in and see you after you've been crying for 5 minutes. Maybe the boundary is 10 minutes. Maybe the boundary is I'm going to do a 3-minute timer at first, then a 5-minute timer, then a 10-minute timer, whatever that is. It's setting it up with a framework and going about it consistently, because if you are consistent in your approach to how you sleep train your baby, it will come together and it will work. It's when we start to falter, and sometimes we pick you up, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we climb in bed with you, sometimes we don't. Sometimes you climb in bed with us, sometimes you don't. Then your baby is going to be very confused as to what we mean by all of this, what you're trying to accomplish. So it's around setting a set of boundaries and then sticking to those boundaries as best you can within a framework over time. And that will teach your child to learn to sleep independently. That was a lot of, I hope that was helpful.
That was really helpful. Thank you for walking through that. One quick follow-up question. I'm actually just expecting my first right now, so I'm just trying to get all the information. Is sleep training something you're triggered to do once you're seeing behaviors that, you know, warrant that, or is it something you should just naturally start doing after that 12-week period?
So it's typically we see there's two sides of it. There's life before your 4-month sleep regression and life after your 4-month sleep regression. Life before your 4-month sleep regression is all about setting really solid foundations. And some babies, some newborns will pick this up beautifully, swimmingly. It will go super smoothly and everything will be fine. And some babies just won't, and that's fine. The foundations are about doing your thank you for being here, Emily. So foundations are all about setting the right environment, following wake windows, practicing drowsy but awake when you can, really fostering independent sleep as it's available to you in those first 4 months. And maybe that's all the time with a very calm demeanored, very calm temperament baby. Maybe it's never, like with my children. And either way, you can focus on these foundations as best you can. And then sleep training is something that it's a personal parenting decision. It is up to you how and when you do it. It is up to you if you do it. And it is all about then basically reversing this regression, because at 4 months, your baby goes through this massive cognitive leap where often you hear people explain that it seems like their baby suddenly forgot how to sleep. It's that they are more aware of their environment. They are more aware of your separation from them. They are more mobile. So maybe they're starting to roll, and that causes breaks, that causes night wakings. They're hungrier. There's massive physical growth spurt. So there's all these reasons why suddenly your baby who was able to sleep cannot sleep. And then there's subsequent regressions that happen at 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months, and 2 years. And they're all pretty much like clockwork in that they all come for each baby at roughly the same time and for roughly the same reasons. And during these periods of disruption, you see parents pick up different habits, because there is this inherent fear that nobody's ever going to sleep again, that it's never going to pass, that this is my life now, and I just need to do what I need to do to survive. And so usually this acts as an impetus for sleep training, or baby never goes back to sleeping independently for whatever reason. They're much more aware, they don't like it. And so that would be a time that you would consider sleep training. 4 months is a good time to do it because it's your first big period of sleep transition and sleep disruption. And so when you've done it once, often you can come back to the same method and use that method as like a refresher course almost for your baby. And then it comes together really quickly. And so it gives you a set of tools and a framework to then support or not support through future periods of disruption. So for example, I had to do a full sleep training program with my son at 4 months. My daughter, we were able to work through foundations and get that to come together. But with both of my children, because they do sleep independently, when they do cry out in the night, I know that it's because they need something specific. Like I know that it's out of character, I'm able to be more in tune with them. And so for me personally, you know, if I hear like either of them cry out at 1 o'clock in the morning, I feel very empowered to go to them immediately and look after them immediately, because I know that that's not like them. That's not what they would normally do. And so it's really a personal decision as to when you do it. Some families choose to co-sleep. They do it safely. They do it ongoing, and that works for them until maybe baby's 2 years. And then at 2 years, another sibling comes, and at that point, we need to move the toddler to the bed. And so for that family specifically, that's a good time to sleep train. So there is no one specific trigger that applies to everybody as to the reason. Maybe mom had 9 months mat leave and mom has to go back to work, and mom has a very demanding job, and so can no longer feed baby every 90 minutes through the night. Well, then that's a good reason for that family to choose to sleep train at that time. And so a good, I guess, indicator is when whatever you're doing is no longer working for you. That would be when you choose to sleep train. And then you choose a style that works with your parenting in terms of how you choose to do it.
Got it. That's really helpful. Thanks for the examples too.
No problem. No problem. And I just want to say hi to Liz, because I've known Liz forever, and I'm so happy that she's here. Hi, Liz.
Hi. Sorry, I had to like jump off. I had to put my own baby to sleep. But
No.
that went miraculously smoothly compared to last night. So that's nice.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Do you I was gonna ask actually if you're gonna send the recording around or
Yeah.
Okay,
I
amazing.
have them on a page. I've got the Newborn Foundations
Okay.
one on a page on my website. And I also have one on regressions that Gail and I did. And so that's also on the website. And so I can send the link to this, which will go on that page, and then you'll have all three.
amazing. Thank you. She's only 7 weeks, so I'm like,
She's 7 weeks. Oh my goodness.
I don't know if I'm too early but I feel like I'm already behind.
It's, you know what?
Which is just the theme of motherhood. for the
7
first
weeks
time.
is just a wild ride. Like the first 7 weeks, I feel like you don't even, like at 7 weeks, I could not find my feet if they were attached to my body. Like it was,
Yeah.
just, you know, at 7 weeks, at 10. So I kind of say like at 10 weeks, like when it comes to baby sleep, at 10 weeks, you start to get your evenings back. At 16 weeks, you
Mhm.
get your nights back. And then at that time, your whole day, like your whole, everything at least is predictable. And there will always be things while you're up all night, and there'll always be transitions, but like
Mhm.
that's kind of when you can breathe. Until then, it's just wild and fun and beautiful.
Amazing. I've been looking at 3 months. 3 months is my target.
Yeah,
Like, just get to 3 months.
you're almost there. We're
Yeah.
almost 5 more weeks.
Okay.
Katie, what do you
Okay.
think about? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I'll look for the recordings and then maybe we can catch up.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, awesome.
Cool. I have a question about sleeping in the carriers. How do you feel about that? Like doing a nap in a baby carrier?
Oh my gosh, I love it. Sorry, I probably should have talked about that earlier. I love baby naps in carriers and also on the go. And I'm a huge, particularly when you have younger babies, I'm a huge supporter of contact naps, bridging naps. Like I think as new moms, we get totally wrapped up in the idea that we have to sleep within this framework and baby has to sleep in a bassinet at all times. And I think then you're really stuck to being home. And I think carrier naps are beautiful for bonding. They're really good for getting out of the house and not feeling like you are restrained and stuck in a dark room, particularly as your baby comes out of this period of sleeping all the time. And before you're at the 4 or 5 month mark where naps are consolidated, you feel like you're always putting your baby down. And so carrier naps are a really good opportunity to just get out of the house. Baby sleeps well because they're rocking, they're close to you. You get to get out and get some sunshine, get some freedom, get some errands done. So much of those first few months of life are more about getting sleep, making sure baby is getting enough sleep during the day, making sure that baby is sleeping within the right wake windows and sleeping for long enough that they're getting restorative sleep. Sometimes the only way to do that is in a carrier nap, is in a stroller nap, is, recognizing that your child's having a hard day. And so getting in the car and going for a drive for an hour because your baby sleeps beautifully in the car seat. Like they're all tools in the belt to make sure your baby's getting rest that they need. And also making sure that you as a mother are taking care of your own mental health by getting out of the house, by going to see people, by getting out in the sunshine. Like they're all very important tools. And so I also just think sometimes everybody needs to just stop what they're doing and cuddle their baby. And so that's the other is, there's so much pressure to do things when the baby's sleeping, get the dishes done, get the laundry done, get the washing done, clean the house, make sure you've ordered your groceries, whatever it is. That I think as new moms, we just need to slow down and stop and be like, I'm going to take this next 2-hour block to cuddle my baby. And like, just maybe I'm going to read something on my phone. Maybe I'm going to catch up on messages. Maybe I'm going to do nothing. Maybe I'm just going to lie here, but I'm going to stop what I'm doing and be present and not worried about looking after the house and all the other ways.
Yeah, no, I used to, I noticed through the years at the new moms group, the moms that did baby wearing, a lot of times they just seemed more relaxed, they just wore their babies. If they fell asleep, I don't know, they just seemed more relaxed. So I just always kind of like that because babies, especially for those of you who will say they're taking shorter naps or whatever, do a nap in a carrier because honestly, they sleep longer.
They do.
And you can get stuff done, even if it's just watching TV or something, or just whatever. Just like you said, getting out and just taking a walk and for your own mental health.
Yeah. I think you just don't want to be in a position like if you've got a baby that's on 5 naps in a day and you are constantly trying to put that 5-nap baby down in a bassinet, like you are either feeding, changing a diaper, or putting a child down to bed. And it's overwhelming. Like I think baby wearing is one of those things that just gives you some empowerment. Like it gives you your freedom back. And then it's obviously like beautiful bonding because you get to have your baby so close to you.
Right.
I always used to feed in my carrier as well, because it was just like you're there. So it's just convenient.
Well, maybe we'll do one on that and you could do a little demo.
My breastfeeding days are behind me, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
Well, does anybody else have any questions? Okay. I love doing these. So I'm so grateful for you all being here. So thank you very, very much.
Yes. And if you have any questions for me or for Katie, there's our emails, right? Are at the end of the webinar.
Yep.
Contact information. Yeah. So
yeah, they are. And so I will, once we jump off this, we'll get the recording and I'll probably send that around to everybody tomorrow once it's up on my landing page.
Okay. Well, good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Lovely to
night.
see
You guys are all amazing.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Okay.
There.
Great job. Yeah.